Greetings friends, Dragon here. If it is your first time finding my channel, do please consider clicking that red button and subscribing. Do lots of unboxings, lots of reviews of mostly East Asian cinema. Today getting into one that I unboxed last week. This is 88 Films' release of Erotic Ghost Story, a Cat 3 film from 1990, released in a sort of semi-deluxe package, so maybe not quite as full-blown as we saw for The Young Master from 88, but with a hard full slipcase and booklet and poster and whatnot. So if you want to see exactly what's in the box, then jump over and check out the unboxing of it. I'll leave a link to that at the end of the video. So today, mostly just getting into the film and the Blu-ray of it. If you have not seen it, I'll try and keep this mostly spoiler-free, but there's, in all honesty, not a huge amount to spoil in this movie. It's not a particularly complicated story. It's not a particularly complicated plot. Incidentally, for being called Erotic Ghost Story, it's not that erotic. There's no ghosts in it, and it's kind of barely a story. So one for the die-hard Amy Yip fans more than the rest of us, I suspect. If you're just wanting to kind of get into Cat 3 as a genre, there's maybe some other examples that might be better to track down before this. But we'll get into it. So, directed by Lam Noi Kai and starring Amy Yip, Man So and Hitomi Kudo as three fox fairies who've taken on human form, have to live very chaste and provocative lives for a period of time in order to retain their human form. They encounter a scholar played by Ha Ching Ling who leads them astray, and as the film progresses we find out that he might not be all he appears to be. There's two other neighbours who stay next to the three girls, played by Hachi Chun and Manfred Wong, who are mostly just there for comedy value, so they kind of intermittently pop up for just some sort of slapsticky beats along the way. And the rest of the cast is filled out by Lam Chung playing Sun Kei, a Taoist priest, who the girls, as they're I think meant to be disciples of Taoism, they interact with him occasionally through the course of the film. But really this is just a kind of an excuse or a setup for a huge amount of sex scenes, some more graphic than others. Amy Yip was famous for her Yip tease, so she would go as close as possible to almost being completely nude but not quite, so she'd always manage to kind of cover herself through very careful placement of hands or other people's hands, or being kind of side onto the camera, or sometimes cherry blossoms or rose petals or anything else she could use to kind of retain a little bit of modesty. Probably very wise. I think there's that sense of leaving a little bit to the imagination is probably a good thing. So I think that helped her career to endure an awful lot longer than many of the actresses who just bared all straight away. I think the one that gets the roughest ride, no pun intended, in terms of the nudity stakes is the Japanese actress, who they clearly took advantage of the fact that I think in Japan often at this period in time particularly it was a lot more common for full nudity to be a thing in these type of movies. So yeah, Hitomi Kudo is probably the one that has to kind of bear all the most of the three of them. But really, like I say, there's not an enormous amount going on story-wise. It's largely a Hong Kong remake or a Hong Kong version of The Witches of Eastwick, with shades of The Evil Dead and shades of, I guess, The Exorcist to a certain degree. But it's really not that supernatural. The last kind of, as close as you could call it to the ghost element, though it's really maybe more of a demon element, doesn't really show up until the last act, when we find out exactly kind of what's going on with the scholar. But really it's just an excuse for large amounts of nudity. And if that is your thing, you will love it. If you're just coming to this for the sake of kind of wanting to explore a type of Hong Kong cinema that you maybe haven't seen, then I would heartily recommend that you track down Hex before this. It's also on 88 Films. It's a much better movie, a kind of Hong Kong reinterpretation of Diabolique, the French film. I've done a review of this already on the channel, so I'll leave a link to this as well. You can jump over and check that out, because I think that's an infinitely more interesting, arguably more erotic, and does actually have some sort of genuine ghost sort of supernatural beats to the storyline, which this movie doesn't. And if you want just pure Cat 3, then certainly the most famous one's probably Naked Killer with Ching Mi Yao, and again is a much better movie. That being said, one of the extra features on this for me, was really the main reason for trying to track down the set and for kind of wanting to get into it early. There's a full episode of a Hong Kong talk show called Celebrity Talk Show, which ran from 1989. It's really hard to get episodes of this in the UK, even harder to find them with proper subtitles. But for me, one of the main interesting elements is really the three hosts. So all three of the presenters of the talk show were connected to the industry. There's the composer James Wong, who did an awful lot of the soundtracks for a bunch of Jackie movies, for the Once Upon a Time in China series. There's the producer Lam Chia, who produced Mr. Nice Guy, Armored God, and City Hunter for Jackie Chan, amongst a whole host of others. But really, the main interest for me was Ni Kuang. Ni Kuang's a screenwriter, predominantly screenwriter, novelist, insanely prolific. I think he wrote over 300 novels and over 400 film scripts when he was active. Still alive, thankfully. There was a very old and happily retired gentleman now, back living in Hong Kong again. But he was the main screenwriter for Shaw's, really. So he wrote pretty much every single one of my favourite Shaw Brothers movies was written by Ni Kuang. So he did 36 Chamber, he did 5 Venoms, Avenging Eagle, Mad Monkey Kung Fu, Brave Archer, Crippled Avengers. Also wrote Fist of Fury in 1972 for Bruce Lee, though it didn't get credit. There goes my cat. Big stretch. Great, thanks dude. You wanted to get in on the ghost story action? So I think the talk show episode that's on here is like 45 minutes long. It's pretty crazy seeing how kind of rude they are. Let's try and not sit on the booklet for Erotic Ghost Story. Oh, you're just going to do your thing. All right, man, it's yours now. Bob will not be happy that you're sitting all over his glorious artwork. So the talk show that's on here, I think for me was the biggest sort of draw of trying to get the box set. It's pretty spectacular to see really kind of how rude and how rough James Wong and Lam Chia are to the actresses. Normally that show is filmed in a studio, but here they've actually kind of moved their sofas from their studio set onto the set of the movie, and so they interview Amy Yip and I think Man-so and another Japanese actress whose name I didn't have a note of, who kind of doesn't really show up until the last act of the film. And she speaks virtually no Chinese, so she's there with translation being done by Lam Chia, who apparently speaks fluent Japanese. But that's just an opportunity for James Wong to be insanely rude about her weight, really. It's pretty spectacular to see just kind of how rough a time it was for the actresses working at this point in time. Because this is a talk show, you would have hoped that people would be on slightly more better behaviour. But yes, it's pretty crazy to see. Ni Kuang handles himself pretty well, doesn't kind of descend down to the sort of lechy depths that the other two guys do quite as much. Says some random, pretty crazy statements, but yeah, it's thoroughly entertaining. So I highly recommend that special feature. You also have 2 commentary tracks, one by Arnie and Mike Leader. You have a second track with the film critic Sam Dane, who I think also did Come Drink With Me for 88. Her commentaries are pretty good. You get a bunch of trailers, and then you obviously get the actual physical bits and pieces with the set. So you get the booklet, which I can't show you, partly because of its huge amount of nudity, and also partly because my cat's enormously fat ass is currently sitting on it, and a poster, which I checked out last time. So yeah, if you want to see the details of that, jump over and check out the unboxing video. But for me, one for the diehard fans. Like I say, there's other better Cat 3 movies out there, but this one may be worth getting for the special feature. But you could probably save your pennies for a little bit longer and wait till it comes out as a standard edition, unless you're super fussed to get the full slip. So I would probably give this 5 overinflated bosoms out of 10. I think not one of my favourite releases that the company's put out so far, but certainly one of the more interesting ones to sort of speak about the oddity of these type of movies. So yeah, 5 out of 10 for me. I'm fascinated to know what my friends over on Hong Kong Blu-ray is going to make of this, because I think Leon is a much bigger Amy Yip fan than I am, and has probably a lot more experience also of a lot more Cat 3 movies, so I'm much more intrigued to know where he kind of places it in the overall scheme of things. But that's my 2 cents. Thank you very much for watching. Check back in again tomorrow for another vid, and take care. Enjoy the rest of your day. Oh dude, come on, move.